I kept having the same nightmare, over and over again. But all I could remember was bits and pieces. Looking into the misted mirror of the bathroom, I saw my reflection. Then I noticed it. Blood begins to pour from a wound in the side of my neck. A wound which seems to grow and spread in a cracking web, like a windshield smashed with a rock. It gets bigger, and chunks of flesh crumble and slough off of me like ruined plaster from an ancient building's facade. As if I am a porcelain doll, which has begun to age and chip and flake away with time, revealing the darkness beneath. But it gets worse. There is something within that festering wound bed, and I turn my head to look, and see eyes staring back at me from within it. Looking back at me, familiar as my own reflection. There's more, but I can never remember it. There has to be more. It all started a while back when I had my first novel published. All the trouble. It began with a good thing. I write horror as a part-time job, but I only started doing that recently. A little over a year ago, I managed to put together about 50,000 words concerning a security guard who gets caught up in a murder investigation in an old haunted asylum where he works. It was partially inspired by a job I had about a decade ago, working as a security guard in a century-and-a-half-old asylum in my hometown. The sanatorium where the novel was set had been the source of real-life rumors and legends for years in the city where I live. Now it's being torn down for condos. Even after all this time, I still get nightmares about that old place. So it was easy enough to write a horror novel about it. I showed it to some friends, and one of them had a connection in the publishing industry. After a meeting with the publisher, we made an agreement to have about 1,000 copies printed, and I received a tidy advance for my efforts. But the bigger joy was finally being able to declare myself a published author. I was thrilled. It was a dream come true. I had wanted to be an author for as long as I could remember. I had attempted to write a novel before, but had failed miserably the first time. And this felt like redemption. I felt like I'd made a big accomplishment, and I wanted to share the news with people. So, I posted about the upcoming publication on Reddit. I'd written the novel piecemeal and posted it there as a series, so it seemed appropriate to share the news with the community. I was amazed how many people commented to congratulate me and cheer me on. Then, someone in the comments very kindly asked for advice. They congratulated me and asked what recommendations I could offer them as an aspiring writer who wants to be published one day. What did I know? I asked myself. I had just written this series and happened to have a connection to a publisher. If not for that, it probably wouldn't have even happened for me. It felt like I was pretending. Like I was just faking and acting like I was a real writer. That was when it hit me. Imposter syndrome, like I had never felt it before. Sure, I'd had that feeling in the past. Maybe we all have. That overwhelming urge to climb right out of your own skin. Because who people think you are isn't you. You wanted to be something special, sure, but you're not. I'm not. I wasn't really a writer, I was just an imposter. My writing wasn't even all that good compared to others. I would never see my name on the New York Times bestseller list. I would be lucky to find a few family members willing to buy the book. I logged off after leaving a brief reply, trying my best to give advice when it felt like I didn't have the right to do so. I felt like a phony. A hack. I went to bed early, and had a night of fitful dreams and existential nightmares. In my dream, I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror. It was so vivid I could feel the cold tile floor beneath my bare feet. Mist hung in the air from the shower, and water clung to my skin in fat droplets as I looked at my reflection. It was fogged up, so I wiped the mirror dry with a towel, and saw something odd. My skin was peeling and cracking on the right side of my neck and face, like an old sunburn ready to come off. It was red and angry looking around the blistering wound. I peeled away the thin layer of dead skin at the center of it and brushed my fingers against something. Then reflexively pulled my hand away, horrified at what I felt there. There was something round underneath the dead skin. Something large, slick, and warm, moving around. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of me, as something like a giant black bubble began to emerge from my neck and the side of my face. A large ovaloid shape, covered in sticky, stretching strands of goo. It seemed to have a mind of its own as it wriggled and squirmed to free itself, like an ectopic twin gaining self-awareness and attempting independence. It defied all logic and physics, biology and common sense, as it pulled itself out from its hidden place, prying its way out from inside of me. There was a strange sense of losing something, as if a part of me were going with it as it separated from me. As it emerged fully, I saw it was another person, a doppelganger, an exact duplicate version of me covered in greenish-yellow goo, which dripped and globbed onto the tile bathroom floor. Suddenly, the doppelganger turned to look at me. He pulled the last part of his soggy, sticky foot from the hidden space where he had been residing inside of me, and gave me a good look up and down, as if appraising me. Then he smiled, his teeth perfectly white and unblemished. "Go back to sleep," he said. And as he did, I felt my eyelids begin to grow heavy, and my vision went dark. Big day tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed, feeling like it had all surely just been a terrible dream, and not even able to remember most of it. My phone's alarm was singing its familiar tune, telling me it was 6 a.m. and time to get up and get ready for work. It was still dark outside now, in late November, and I felt like I had barely slept. My wife was snoring, sprawled out in bed, and instantly taking up my body space. I got up reluctantly, feeling a pang of jealousy while I watched her resume her slumber in the darkness. I had a bad headache on the right side of my head, from my temple down to my jaw. This was a terrible sign for so early in the day. It meant I would likely wind up with a migraine by the afternoon, and would be in bed by 7 p.m. trying to sleep it off. Vaguely, I remembered my dream, and there being a pain on that side of my head. Some sort of injury, perhaps. I wondered if the headache had plagued my sleep with nightmares. Stumbling from the bedroom in the dark, I closed the door behind me and went into the bathroom to brush my teeth and get ready for work. Due to my throbbing temples and pressure-filled eyeballs, I refused to turn the light on for as long as possible. But eventually I relented so I could get into the shower. I didn't want to attempt that in the dark. Strangely, I saw the bathtub was wet, as was the towel, as if someone had recently showered. But Christine had been asleep. Odd. And the floor was wet too. The nightmare flashed through my mind again in pieces, but I didn't remember it all right away. Just standing in front of the mirror and peeling something from my skin. That was all I could remember as I turned the knobs and water began to blast from the rusty shower head. But I struggled desperately to remember the rest of the dream. It seemed important somehow. I finished getting ready for work in the darkened apartment, not wanting to wake my wife by turning on too many lights. There was a strange feeling of someone watching me, and the cats were hiding somewhere instead of coming out for their breakfast when they heard the sounds of me getting ready, as they usually did. The elevator was slow to arrive, so I stood waiting with my work bag in hand, looking at my phone with my other hand. It was still early, and I'd make it to work in plenty of time as long as I didn't get delayed by traffic. When I got downstairs, I ambled out to the parking lot in the pre-dawn light. They say it's always darkest before dawn, and it's true. As someone who has worked plenty of night shifts outdoors, I can attest to that. It was nearly pitch black outside, since everyone in the building was still sleeping, and our security light had burned out a few days prior. As I walked across the rain-dampened parking lot towards my car, I hit the unlock button on the key fob. The front lights of the car blinked on, momentarily illuminating the darkened area around the vehicle. That was when I saw him. He was standing in the shadows about 20 feet away from my car, wearing what looked like a trench coat. His hands were in his pockets, and he was just standing there in the parking lot, in the dark, watching me, staring at me. I froze for a second, my breath catching and my chest hitching with fear. "Hello?" I said, unsure. "Hello?" he called back, his voice a completely accurate imitation of mine. "Ha ha," I laughed nervously. "Ha ha," he intoned back. I became nervous and quickly walked towards my car, which meant moving closer to him. He suddenly began to mimic my footsteps, walking in time with me, his path taking him towards my car as well. Noticing that, I stopped. "What are you doing? What are you doing? This isn't funny. You need to stop. I need to get to work. This isn't funny. You need to stop. I need to get to work." He repeated back everything I said, obnoxious as a little kid. But it wasn't annoying. It was terrifying, especially in the darkness of the parking lot where I couldn't see his face. And even more so as the details of my dream began to come back to me, bit by bit. "What do you want?" I asked him. For once, he didn't mimic me. He simply stepped forward, his face suddenly illuminated in the dull glow of light coming from inside. His face was my own, an exact replica of mine. He just smiled, his teeth bright white like they had never eaten a meal, never drank coffee or been stained red with wine. He smiled wide and shook his head, as if saying no. He wouldn't tell me what he wanted. That would be too easy. You'll find out soon enough. The man from my dream, who looked just like me, turned away and began to walk into the shadows, disappearing from sight. Before I knew it, he was gone. I got into my car, feeling frightened and shaky. What did he want? And was it really the creature from my dream? Or was it just some creep who happened to look like me? Just the world's worst and strangest coincidence. No part of me believed that last option. I was certain this was something supernatural. Whoever that was, he had been a part of me, and we had parted ways from each other the night before. When I got to work, I ran through all the possibilities of what could be happening to me. A mental break didn't seem completely out of the question, but it also occurred to me that this could be an unexplained phenomena, something that had never happened before. Maybe this was something that had not happened for many hundreds of years. Maybe it was a once-in-a-millennia event. But there could be a record of it somewhere. Doppelgangers. I knew that term. And that was what this seemed to be. A doppelganger. So when I got to work, I looked up what those were. I found that it was a subject that had been discussed over many centuries in recent history. One account in particular caught my eye. The case of Vice Admiral Sir George Tryon. On June 2nd, 1893, he was seen by several guests at a party being thrown by his wife at their family home in Eaton Square, London. The only problem was, he was off the coast of Syria at that moment, going down with his ship, the HMS Victoria. Another case, John Donne, an English poet, was said to have seen his wife carrying their dead child in her arms, walking through the room twice and then disappearing before his eyes, on the same night as the stillbirth of their daughter. The long and short of it was, based on these stories, doppelgangers were a bad omen. They were a sign of death. No wonder he hadn't wanted to tell me what he wanted. He wanted to kill me. Or perhaps to tell me I was dying. I tried to focus on my work for the rest of the day, but it was difficult to get much done with such dark thoughts on my mind. Finally, my lunch break rolled around, and I went down to the cafeteria and scrolled Reddit on my phone while drinking coffee and eating. There were a bunch of notifications when I logged on, all comments and awards for a story that I didn't remember posting. But then, when I read it, I vaguely remembered it. Only I had never written that story. It had just been in my head. Weirdly, someone was also answering comments from my account as well. And I knew immediately who it was. The doppelganger. The imposter. The son of a bitch was trying to usurp my username. And he was using my ideas. The worst part was, it was far better written than anything I had done before. My phone rang suddenly and I answered it at my desk, whispering into the receiver. "Hello? It's me," said the doppelganger. "What the hell, man? You stole my idea. I was gonna write that story." "Heh, you had just screwed it up. Admit it. That's why you've been thinking about writing it for so long, but never got around to it." I didn't respond. He was right. What the hell do you want, anyways? He laughed for a few long moments before answering. "Your life. You admitted it yourself. You're not good enough. Just give up. I'll take over from here." "Who are you?" "The real you. You're just an imposter, remember? You wished you could crawl out of your own skin? Well, now you have. All you have to do now is slink away like you do best. Don't want to get into another fight with your wife? Don't worry. I'll take care of it for you. When you get home, she'll have it out of her system. And then tomorrow, you can take the day off work. I'll fill in for you. How does that sound?" "Oh no. I've seen this movie before, and it didn't turn out well for Michael Keaton. Just go back to hell or wherever you came from, you freak." I slammed the phone down, startling my coworkers sitting nearby. Smiling awkwardly at them, I tried to look normal and went back to work. But it was difficult. There was another me out there, and he was trying to become my full-time replacement. Not only that, but he might want me dead to more easily fulfill that goal. When I got home that night, I found my key didn't work in the door. I knocked, and my wife Christine answered. "Oh, you're back. Did you get the... Where's the wine? I thought that's what you were going out for." There were candles lit on the table, and a nice dinner had been prepared. I realized immediately who had done it all. The doppelganger. "Forget it, we don't need the wine," she said. "I'm just so happy you finally did something romantic for me like this. You never do stuff like this." She looked excited, but at the same time hurt, as if not able to understand why it took me so long to do something like this. I couldn't understand it myself. It had taken another me, a better me, to do what I couldn't. I wanted to disappear, to shrink out of sight and become an invisible speck of dust in that moment. To do exactly what the doppelganger wanted. I didn't deserve her, and she was a saint to put up with me. But that was a cliche. Really, I just needed to do better. "I'm gonna start doing stuff like this more often," I said. "I promise." She looked doubtful, but with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She said she believed me. Later that night, I woke up from sleeping, needing to go to the bathroom. Yeah, I know, I'm getting old. When I came back into the darkened bedroom, I saw him standing there, in the shadows. My wife was fast asleep, and he stood at the foot of the bed, staring at me. Just his silhouette, black as the Reaper's shadow. He raised a finger to his lips. Quiet. "Why are you here?" I whispered. "Just leave us alone. No one asked you to come here." He stood over the bed, looking at me, saying nothing. "Your kind, doppelganger, fetch, whatever you're called, your kind comes when someone's dying, right? Well, there's no one dying here, so leave. Just go." I realized I was trying to negotiate with something I didn't understand, but that didn't stop me. He wasn't budging, but I wasn't going to give up that easily. Despite my worst fears standing in front of me, I screamed at him, desperate for him to be gone. desperate to be the only me again. What are you standing there for? Didn't you hear me? Just leave! 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 Christine was turning on her bedside lamp and blinking her eyes as I continued to scream. She stood up and ran over to me, and I realized there was no one else in the bedroom but us. We were alone again. "Who are you yelling at?" she asked, looking worried. I didn't know how to tell her the truth. I still don't. After telling her I was sleepwalking and having some sort of terrible nightmare, she went back to bed. I'm still awake. I can't sleep, knowing he could still be out there. When I wake up tomorrow, what else will he have taken from me? I'll have to fight for my life if I want to keep it. But for once, that doesn't sound so bad. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/Jordan Grupe Horror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow, and see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.